Alright, and so this is going to be the second tutorial going over the diagonal point method at 1 point. Okay, and so you can see here this picks up right where the last one left off, and I've gone ahead and built out the rest of that grid that was in the previous tutorial for the ground plane, and I wanted to talk about a couple of other things, how we can start to think about this a little bit more three-dimensionally. Okay, so the first thing is, if you become limited by how far back this is projecting, you can extend this back as far back as you like. Essentially what you need to do though is you just need to continue to extend out that edge out from that measured point. So if you want to continue to go backwards, we can continue to go backwards at infinity, just as long as you have enough space on your desk to continue to measure out units in that dimension to go back. Okay. The second thing we need to note, and I didn't talk about this in the last tutorial, but wherever you take the picture plane, that's where everything is obviously going to be at scale, so it's going to be perfectly measured. The farther away you get from the picture plane, the more distorted your image is going to become. So you want to make sure you make that cut in a very intelligent location. Alright, and so we can start to look at this, and I'm just going to go ahead and lock this in so we can start to improve that. And you can start to see we can use that as a grid, and we can start to draw on that. The second question you guys might have as we start to look at this is, how do we start to construct this back up? And so I've also gone ahead and done a vertical construction here. And the way that that works is essentially we're going to take these, again, moving back towards the vanishing point in the vertical. And then wherever these guys, since we have this corner here that we've drawn back, intersect, we can literally pull that up. Okay, and so that enables us to take these sorts of geometries and get them to sit just the way we want. And so we can start to pull that off. Now, something I want you to note in doing this, I've done this in different colors, so the demonstration here, and I just wanted to give you a sense here, and I'm going to unlock all of this so you can see all this. When we get into some of this line work, this can become really, really confusing, and so if you start to use multiple layers of trace to start to annotate multiple layers of geometry, we can really get a better handle on what it is that we're trying to accomplish in the perspective. And so I'd recommend that you guys work with that and build your geometries according to that principle here. Alright, and so I'm going to relock some of those geometries, and I'll turn off some of the stuff that I don't need, which is equivalent to taking off that layer of trace if I ended up needing it. And we're going to start to talk about how we can build actual geometries on this. And so the way that 1 point works is essentially you're building a three-dimensional connect the dots where you have an X and a Y, and then you have a Z axis. And so you have a Cartesian coordinate system, and we're going to essentially just pan around in this geometry and start to build this stuff up. And so my students said the Pierce Commons area, so if we start to look at this, assuming each one of these steps was 1 foot up here, I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys how you're going to do this. So for each one of these steps, we know that we're going 1 foot up here. And if you're clever, you can probably start to see how this is going to play out and emerge here. And we're just doing ourselves a favor by building out this construction. Alright, and again, I'm on the layer that I'm building the grid with, not on the layer that I'm going to actually be drawing on. And you'll see what I'm going to do here in a second with that. Okay. So we'll go up, and then just so we can get a couple of these, we'll take a look and see what these stairs will look like once we get above the horizon line and start to look at the underside of them. Okay. Now I don't actually have a set of measured drawings for this space, so I'm going to assume that we're just going to start stepping back, and then we'll start to see how we land in this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the layer on the ground is fine. It's not in my way at all, or at least I'm not graphically confused. If it starts to confuse you, you can go ahead and remove it. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, which is to say I'm going to put a new layer of trace, and I'm going to call this my stair edge. Okay. So what I can do once I draw those stairs, I can pull those edges out. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this in Kansas purple here. All right. We can take this now, and we can go ahead and lock this in place, which is to say we have another layer of trace on here, so we're not going to be able to edit this in any way. We'll go ahead and delete that since that's not there. Alright, so we can go ahead, and from this point we can start to look at, again, I'll turn that off, our stairs moving back. So each one of these is 3 feet back, and so I'm going to assume for each one of these steps that we're going back 3 feet. It's obviously whatever it is that you measured, and you guys should set up your grid according to that, right? So I'm getting these 3-foot sections from going in here, and if, say, for example, each one of these was 2 feet, I could come over here where that intersects this, using my parallel bar. I could start to build that out, and then wherever that intersected, I could draw that up, and so that would be 6 inches up and 2 feet back. Okay, I'll go ahead and undo that. And that's how you guys are going to construct each one of these. You need to calculate the distance back, you need to calculate the distance up, and then you need to calculate the distance over. So, but hopefully, if you have this set up, we have a mechanism for drawing these each across. So we'll go ahead and start drawing. And so each one of these steps is going to be 3 feet back and 6 feet up. And then if we've drawn our guy appropriately, we can literally just follow along our grid here that we've set up and just move along. Making sure that we're actually intersecting, and this is where it's really important to have a really sharp pencil. Like I said, I'm doing this so we can sort of zoom in, and then we'll just take a quick jog up here so we can get above the horizon line and see what those steps look like. So we'll do a little bit of cheating. Alright, so we have this over here. If we turn off this grid so we can take a look, you can start to see that we're already getting a sort of clear sense about how this is starting to work here. It looked like I didn't really do a very good job of drawing this, so we'll go ahead and get that fixed. You guys are using an eraser to do that, and I fortunately can redo that pretty quickly. So making sure that we're actually maintaining that line on our grid. Okay. Alright, and so from there what we can do is we need to figure out exactly how far out the steps can cross, and this is where things get a little bit tricky. First thing we can do, again, we're still drawing our stairs, is we can create these horizontal lines that are going to come out, and then we'll end up trimming those off later. So we can come in here. So using our parallel bar, we're just going to come across. And each one of those corners are essentially where we have an edge. We can start to draw that edge. And I'm not being mindful at this point where these edges land, and you can see we have this in here, but that's going to actually fall below our view, so we don't actually need it as we start to look at this. Okay, so now if I'm going to go ahead and turn off my grids here, as if I were looking at my paper, you can start to see the steps are starting to define themselves across that edge. And in here we can start to see that where we're not going to be able to see. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to trim those out so we can start to get a sense of how that looks. Okay. So that's equivalent to using your guys' eraser. So we'll go ahead and turn on our grid again. And now we need to calculate the height. And this is where things get really easy as long as you've been doing a good job of keeping your calculations. Again, I'm going to assume that the steps are 6 feet wide, so that maintains with our grid. And so then wherever this comes up, I'm just going to draw one line that goes up. And that's, again, we're going 3 feet back and 6 feet over according to our grid here. We're just going to draw that line straight up. Okay. Now, at this point, I don't actually any longer need my construction grid. I just need the vanishing point. And so I'm going to go ahead and redraw that on this sheet. And I'll show you what I mean. So from there, each one of these guys becomes a successive interaction, going up, then jogging back to the vanishing point. Each time. And you obviously don't need to draw this, you can align this up, and then wherever that intersection is, you can trim that off. And I want to make sure that I get each one of these perfect. And again, this goes back to this 3D coordinate calculation. And again, we can't see that. And if we had left our stuff alone, we'd be able to see where that belonged. So let's go ahead and turn on our grid again. Turn on this grid. And again, so wherever that intersects, we can start to pull that up. Okay? So Go ahead and turn that off. And then we're ready to do a little bit of erasing so we can actually see the edge of our stairs here. Okay. So I don't really need that anymore. Oh, yes I do. So I'm going to draw that line over to define that edge of my stair. That's going to be the bottom edge of my stair. And obviously these don't go out to infinity, so we'll go ahead and we'll assume that this goes back to some level in the distance there. Okay, and so now we have everything we need to start to trim this out. So we'll go ahead and take all this. And so again, we're going to take this and we're actually going to overlay a new piece of paper on top of this because we still have a lot of construction in here. I'll move that down. We'll call this the stair. Okay. So I'll set that to my current layer, so I'll be drawing on that. I'm going to go ahead and lock this into place because I can't edit it anymore. We can go ahead and just start drawing on top of that. And this is where you guys have come in. This is a freehand exercise. So if you've done a little bit of work with your construction, you can actually do this nice and neatly in freehand here. Where that pops up. Okay. Okay. And I'll go ahead and get this drawn here real quick. I think you guys get the idea. We're basically just playing connect the dots. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit speedier. This will be similar to how you guys use your T-squares. And then I missed, so I'll go ahead and do that. Then we can take out our guy. And using our handy dandy trim tool, trim those out. And then we have a stair in one point. Alright, and that's it.